So, good morning. I'm trying to explain something rather new, and it's the first time I present this, and I open the development I have made around how to manipulate cryptography with a new sort of deniable cryptography. So I'm sorry, I'm not expert at speaking English, so I will try to display my best English I can. I propose this summary just first to present the context and the goal of the studies. Of course, whenever we speak about digital evidence, we have to precise what is legal framework, and you will see that it will depend on the country you are considering. Then we will see that, in fact, you have different actors and possible scenarios, and everyone is trying to manipulate, to pervert, to subvert the other parties. And there is no one side better than another. In fact, there are just attempts, scenarios to convince the other parties. I will then speak about metadata, temporary data, and erased data, because in fact, they are the main things that a judge is looking for and asks to experts to find and to exploit and interpret. And then I will make a focus on new trends in deniable cryptography, and before doing some demos in order to illustrate all this. So the general disclaimer, it's not new. In fact, this work I've developed it in 2021 for a mathematical engineering company in Estonia, and now they have their intellectual property, but they made possible, I asked them to present this, and it's the first time, once again, that I will explain and present with details how it works. So, you have here my background. I would like to stress on the fact that, in fact, I'm fond of mathematics, but from theory until implementation, because it's very funny to try to find mathematical solution and then to implement that and to observe that it works very well. And I have been doing forensic expertise for the Paris court in case of terrorism and so on. And I have been for many years military cryptanalysis, because I spent more than 20 years in the army. So I have drawn everything from my experience to do this kind of research and to present it to you, what is behind the curtain whenever we speak about legal expertise and forensic expertise, especially in this kind of cases. So the aim, it is a very strange, of course, topics, how to manipulate justice and judge, but in fact I would like first to illustrate the fact that the concept of digital evidence is not so simple. And I'm convinced that we cannot fully trust what we call digital evidence. And we will see that some legal systems are lying very, very deeply on digital evidences. And sometimes, other countries, mostly dictatorship, do not hesitate to manipulate evidences, to craft, to forge new evidences, especially against journalists, against people defending human rights. And cryptography is a wonderful tool, because cryptography for judge and expert are some sort of religion. As soon as you find a ciphertext, you find an encryption algorithm and a key, and that everything is matching, well, they found the graal of evidence. It's not so simple. It is the aim of this talk, and to present what I have developed, what we call encryption synthesis. So I'm not a legal expert, but I would like to explain the different legal systems we are considering. And in the world, you have two main systems. The red one is the legal system of English-speaking nations, what we call common law. And the blue, all the rest of the world, and what is not blue is generally derived from the civil law system. So, in common law, in fact, the law is made by the judge, trial after trial. And everything, in fact, everything is strongly related to the concept of proof. And we speak about burden of proof. Every party, may it be prosecutor or the defender, has, by ways of experts, has to prove what he claims. So it is a strong debate, and the best proof, the most convincing proof, will win. And another very interesting system is the principle of reasonable doubt. If the defendant manages to produce evidences that could suggest he is innocent, in common law system, generally, it will be not prosecuted. Of course, on non-democratic countries, they will reverse this principle. If there is any doubt that the prosecuted is innocent, he will be condemned. In civil law, the rest of non-English speaking nations, the law is written by national assemblies, Senate. It is a corpus of text, and the justice has to apply the law written by deputy and senators. Of course, there is a notion of evidence, and of reasonable doubt, but it has not the weight, the power he has in common law system. And in France, I am coming from France, we have a very special case, what we call judge personal conviction. A judge can decide everything is intimately convinced, whatever may be the proof. So it is a rather dangerous system. Most countries do not agree with this kind of law, but in fact, the judges have a tremendous power in France, and the digital evidence or the proof in general are not so prevalent. The consequence that if you manage to introduce some conviction into the judge's mind, you will win. So you have, I wanted to illustrate with two cases, two extreme positions, with every possibility ranging from the two extremes. In fact, you have what we call, it is a common law principle, core principle, the Blackstone formulation. It is better to not condemn guilty person than condemning an innocent, which is a rather good principle. And I would say it is one of the main quality of democratic countries. And in France, it was in the 19th century, it was the most extreme way, and it's a very famous quote, "Give me 6 lines written by the most honest man in France, and I will find enough to hang him." I would say it is probably what is in force nowadays in dictatorships. But, well, we have to choose, and everything is possible between these two extremes. What is evidence? And you are going to see that it's very difficult to define precisely what an evidence is. Digital evidence is any probative information. And the word probative is very difficult itself to define. In fact, it relates to a probability that its proof, ability to prove that the fact really actually occurred. So you have just to claim a fact, find a proof. If everything is matching, it is considered as probative, until there is no counter-proof that will prove the contrary. But you have to keep in mind that it is, we think in terms of probability. And of course, cryptography is a wonderful tool. You have a ciphertext, you have an algorithm, you have a key, and you produce the plain text from the ciphertext with the key. So the probability is equal to 1 for many experts and judges. Metadata and erased data have quite the same status, a little less, but they are considered a very probative element. And we are going to see that it's possible to manipulate everything, depending on the legal context, on the intent, may it be of the prosecutor or the defender. Whenever we are requested by a judge, he asks us to find metadata, erase data, and if there is crypto, to try to break it. But honestly, most of the experts are just apply simple techniques. So generally, they are trying to guess weak passphrases, or to find, due to poor implementation, to find unencrypted copies of the encrypted data, for example, temporary files, or erased data. Sometimes, even for block ciphers, you may have poor implementation. For example, when you are in OFB, output feedback mode, or stream cipher, if you reuse the same key, you will be able to detect and to break quite immediately. And you can see the library I've developed. It enables to break the encryption of the Office suite from Microsoft. You can use open source intelligence technique. For example, you can explore leaked databases in order to try to find passwords. And in fact, every cryptography is considered in such a way that most major countries have a special department of police and intelligence service specifically dedicated to find cryptographic evidences. For example, in France, you have one, the most famous, they only do that, but you have GCHQ in UK, you have FBI, and so on. Of course, they do not disclose everything, because very soon they say, okay, it is secret information, so they can produce evidences without explaining how they did. They managed to find these evidences. So we have a gray area, and it may be partially a problem. So now we have defined the context, the legal context, and now let us see what are the different actors and their interests. You have four kinds of actors in a trial. You have, of course, the defense attorney and the prosecuted person, and they try both not to be condemned. So, of course, the defender will try to conceal that he actually did a crime. The judge and the prosecutor, on the contrary, the prosecutor wants to condemn his work. He defends the nation-state interest. May the state be a democracy or a dictatorship. And the judge tries to find a decision and to decide whether the defendant is guilty or not, under the general principle of considering evidences and reasonable doubt. The expert, as requested by the judge, will find and analyze evidences, mostly, at least in the cases I had to work on, metadata, erased data, and whenever possible, encrypted data. The main problem that many forensic experts are not competent enough in some areas, for example, cryptography. So they can rather easily be fooled. They are supposed, especially in common law system, they can work either for the defense, either for the prosecution, and generally tends to be a debate, a harsh debate between the two parties. And they can be manipulated, corrupted, coerced in some countries, not only dictatorships. I know about cases where the experts have been manipulated in this way. And of course, the last party is intelligence, police, and attackers. They may behave as rogue actors. They may have totally different interests. They can work for mafia, state, intelligence services. Generally, they are very skilled, far more skilled than experts. And in some cases, even for police department, I think in Russia, for example, or in China, they don't have the same ethical norms as we have in democratic countries. So you have all the key players, and of course they will try to interact to subvert the process of a trial. So of course the defendant will try to convince that he is guilty while actually he is not. Normal job for a defendant. Okay. So he will hide evidences, he will try to produce wrong evidences, and so on. But, of course, the attacker, the police, and so on, in some countries will try to coerce the judge, the expert, and maybe perform attacks against the defender by producing wrong evidences in order to frame and to make the defender be condemned, because they are convinced that he is guilty, but they are not able to prove it. So they will build some evidences. And even in the US, for example, we have cases where the police were not so clear about evidences. And of course, the judge, when working for the political power, may also coerce the expert and orientate the expert, because sometimes he is giving additional technical element that will orientate the reflection of the expert. So let us consider possible legal scenarios. In democratic countries, the defender will try to exploit the key principle of reasonable doubt. If he manages to provide proof that will tend to introduce this doubt, he will be declared innocent. In dictatorship, or in between dictatorship and democracy, what I call democratoships, the state will be tempted to force convincing false evidences. And once again, the cryptography, I will see during the demos, is a perfect tool. What is very worrying is a recent, it has been adopted at the UN Central Committee. It is a UN Cybercrime Convention, so we have deeply analyzed this text in order to guess what would be the possible consequences, especially for the human rights. You must be aware of the fact that this text, which is said to apply to all the world, has been pushed in 2017 by a group of what we could say non-democratic countries, and headed by Russia and China, Belarus, North Korea, you see, the nice club. And they try to say, okay, we need a special text that will help to manage cyber criminality in all the world. Coming from Russia, it's like a joke, but well. The text has been in first vote adopted. And in fact, when you analyze this text, in fact, you observe that they want to enforce a World Cloud Act and FISA for the whole world. It's very worrying. So what is at stake? We have in fact, the text defines two general principles, and as a consequence, we can say, without doubt, that it will be a great risk for human rights, but also for cybersecurity professionals, because, for example, they could be forced to reveal secret information regarding access to cloud and so on. And I strongly advise to read articles 24, 28, and 30. They are very worrying aspects. So, as a consequence, this particular text put a lot of danger of the notion of evidence and the way to obtain the evidence. Once again, I strongly advise you to read this text. It should be voted at the UN Assembly in October, so we will keep a close eye to the vote. So, how to manipulate and to build, to try to manage cryptography. In democratic country, we have some sort of dilemma, because in fact, we have to manage crypto in a way or another, because more and more terrorism, organized crime is using cryptography to protect their crimes. On the contrary, in other countries, the aim is to control crypto, to control freedom and human rights. And honestly, Russia, for example, when they present the text to the UN, say, okay, we don't care about human rights, you don't care about privacy, because it is impossible to respect them and to enforce cybersecurity. Very strange claim, but well, it is an official one. If you need more information, I can provide the analysis we have performed, and there is a bibliography at the end of my presentation. What is clear? That even most of the countries try to regulate crypto in a very bad way, because most of the time politicians do not understand what crypto is. But for example, EU tried to enforce backdoors in every encrypted communications. UK do the same, Australia and so on, and you have even Russia and China. They all try to develop crypto control once again, in a very stupid way. Because putting backdoors or similar techniques is bound to be exploited by criminals themselves first. So the challenge is how to guarantee the freedom for citizens with the fundamental right of using strong crypto, but at the same time controlling the criminal use of cryptography. In fact, and I worked on the first one, since the late 1980s, in fact, criminals were using cryptography. You have probably heard about Mujahideen Secrets, which was an encryption suite similar to PGP, which was used Al-Qaeda. I had the occasion to analyze this. It is well done. It's a good job. Very strong keys, strong algorithm. Well, quite impossible whenever correctly used to break. You have probably heard about EncroChat. It was a system reserved only for criminals. In order to have access, you have to prove that you have committed at least one murder. Strange fee, but, well, it has been dismantled by FBI and Europol in 2020. But there were nearly 60,000 users. In 2010, Phantom Secure was a system, a similar system. It has been shut down by the sting operation Anom. And we can speak about MPC, Sky ECC, and Netcom, and probably others we are not aware of. How to manage this criminal use of crypto? In fact, most of the projects are rather secret. The two that are partially public It is a sting operation, Operation Ironside. In fact, the police forces have crafted a special algorithm with a backdoor, and they made it available, seemingly coming from bad guys. But behind these encrypted services, there were police forces. And it enabled, for example, to dismantle Phantom Secure. Kraken operation, you probably heard about 2 or 3 days ago. They dismantled the Ghost system. It was during a supply chain attack, so they modified little by little the encryption that was in place, and in order to introduce backdoors and to control the cryptography, and they arrested a guy in Australia 3 days ago. Others, they are non-public. I know at least one which is still non-public, but is related to intelligence area and not organized crime. So, when we know this, we can suspect that perverting cryptography, misusing or misproposing cryptography can be used by different nation countries for good purpose, fighting against crime, but also in some dictatorship to fight against freedom and human rights. So now let's go into technical details. First, metadata, temporary data, and erased data. In fact, it is possible to do quite as many things as you want. Just be creative. Tampering document and metadata is rather easy. For example, generally I do it by hand when I want to do simulations, but you have tools that you can use, for example, Python OpenXML, or PDFlib. I have modified some of them to introduce new features, but they are rather powerful to programmatically manage documents in a way or another. Of course, if you want to perform and subvert the system, you have also to take care about the operating system event logs. Remind that you have to create a probative context for an evidence. So you have to have a broad view about the data, but also the operating system. There is a partially known case I was working about. You just Google Roshka the beer. In fact, some police forces tried to convince that it was a Russian attack, but they did a mistake, because Roshka Jagir is not a guy. It is a polycephalus identity used by the military secret services. So it is very unlikely that they use this identity to open document and put metadata. Probably other cases, but I'm not aware of. Just, I strongly advise you to listen to the debate from the former CIA and NSA director. It's very interesting. It was recently at the Johns Hopkins University. They say, we killed people on metadata. It is to stress on the fact that for some secret services, we are not speaking about North Korea and Russia, metadata can have a very strong importance and can be considered to kill people. So once again, listen to this interview. It's very interesting. So practically, for example, OpenXML and OpenODF format, you take, for example, Excel file or Word file, you rename them as zip file, because in fact they are the zip archive, you extract the core XML file, you modify it, you put it again in the zip file, and you rename in the Word or Excel document. We will show during the demos. It's very simple. You can do by hand, but can use the libraries I've mentioned right before. erase and temporary data. It's the normal life in a system. You erase data, some application produce temporary data, but you can also forge and craft wrong temporary data and erase data. Because when the data is erased, you cannot prove who actually has erased the data. Of course, you have to take care of the OS logs, event logs. So you can manipulate, you can craft, you can forge any temporary data and erase data, provided you are careful, creative, and imaginative. Now let's have a deep focus on cryptography and what we call deniable cryptography, and the legal aspect, deniable plausibility. In fact, it was in 2020, some colleague asked me, it is not a stupid question, but I take any random sequence, what I can find on the computer. Can we always say it is a ciphertext? The answer is yes. It is known from 1948 with the Shannon third theorem about perfect secrecy. But it's not very easy to enforce practically because we have to use one-time pad. It means a random sequence that you combine with a ciphertext or any other random sequence, and you can produce any admissible, intelligible plain text. The main drawback, the key, the random sequence, is as long as the ciphertext. It's not very practical, especially in the forensics context. But it's possible. So I have pushed the question further. I say, OK, I don't want to consider one-time pad. Is it possible for any random sequence? Once again, remind that it can be any data you find on a hard disk. Is it possible to always produce a deterministic algorithm working with short keys, usually 128, 256 bits, that not OTP, that will produce an intelligible or more plain text? And then this problem was open until very recently, in 2021, and the answer is yes, and we have called this encryption synthesis. And we will see this during the demos. And everything has been developed from the theory to the first proof of concept implementation. It works very well. And so, first, what is a crypto system? For most of people, they say, oh, it is the encryption algorithm. No. The right definition of a crypto system is everything which is in the blue box. The keys, the ciphertext, the plain text, the algorithm. It can be more complex than a simple algorithm. And whenever you fix the plain text, the encryption algorithm, the key, you have one unique ciphertext. But if you get rid of, you relax some component, you will introduce new freedom, degree of freedom, and you can manipulate things. In some case, it is called collisions. But in fact, people generally say, OK, I have an encryption algorithm. No, you can have many more things. For example, just give me a ciphertext. It is precisely what I am going to prove right after. I will give you a key and an algorithm. So, plausible deniability. You have here, and I have put the reference in the bibliography, the legal definition of plausible deniability. Anyone can always deny anything, even if there is an abundance of evidence. Once again, you have to build probative, convincing evidences. So, in fact, the aim with plausible deniability is to lie in a believable, convincing way. So, It is just a relative perspective with regards to evidences you are able to prove, and of course, with the ability to disprove any other counterproof. So it is the legal definition of what plausible deniability is interesting, and the manuscript of Michael Rowe is very interesting to read and to explore. In cryptography, in fact, you have to convince that a given plain text, for example, proving the existence of a crime, doesn't exist. And we have here the official definition of what deniable encryption is by Canetti and all in 1996. The aim is to undermine the attacker's confidence that the data is encrypted or that a given plain text really exists. So the few existing systems, the first one is a rubber hose file system from Julien Assange. Then, at the present time, the most powerful one is Shufflecake from Kudelski Company. And of course, you know TrueCrypt, VeraCrypt, GhostCrypt that are able to produce encrypted partition or containers. At the present time, until very recently, until our work, the case of a single file, encrypted file, was open. But now it is not. So, of course, whenever you speak about deniable cryptography, you have to make sure that any expert won't be able to prove that there is deniability in your system. For example, if you want to guess whether a hidden partition exists in a VeraCrypt or TrueCrypt container, you have work that explain that it is possible to detect it, just to prove that, in fact, there is not one single key, but two keys with a hidden partition. So at the present time, these systems are considered not secure with respect to deniable cryptography and hidden partitions. For example, if you want tools in order to find, even if they have been erased, TrueCrypt or VeraCrypt containers, you can use TC Hunt or TC File Detective, and you will find them easily with the internals of every file system. So, it is precisely where our work is interesting. In fact, once again, we cannot use OTP, one-time PAN. They are as long as a message, and they must be hard-coded in any encryption algorithm we could craft and forge, so it is not possible. So the question was the following. I have C, a ciphertext. It can be any random data on a hard disk. It is an arbitrary random sequence called ciphertext of length n, so thousands of bits. An algorithm E, it is not necessary that it is unique. It just must exist. And two different, for example, arbitrary plaintext P1 and P2. For example, P1 will help to convince the judge that the defendant is innocent. Another one could convince that, on the contrary, is guilty. So I have developed a C framework that is able to generate on purpose very quickly such deniable encryption algorithm with 128 and up to 256 bits. So once again, it is a deterministic algorithm. It is supposed to be public. So whenever you analyze it, it is a common encryption algorithm. Of course, no secret elements are hard-coded, otherwise it will be totally useless. And from the same ciphertext here, and with a different key we produce a different plain text, and it is a degree of freedom I was speaking about right before. And of course, here we have the case for 2 plain text, but you can extend to 3, 4, to a finite number of plain text. And I'm going to show this in the demo. So, of course, you have to evaluate the security against different attack scenarios. So we have proved that it was resistant compared to any other cryptographic algorithm. So if I give you P1 and P2 and see it is impossible to, in a tractable way, to retrieve the 2 keys. If I give you only P1 or P2, it's impossible to find the other plain text. And of course, if you analyze the algorithm, you cannot suspect that there is plausible cryptography inside. There is a huge number of applications. So anti-forensic technique is precisely the talk. But at Besides Athens, I've presented how to do sophisticated malware attack, because depending on whether the malware precursor is able to detect, to determine whether it is under analysis or not, it will decrypt in a malware or in other, the first one being innocent looking. But it is possible to do far more things, and you can see the different development made by OFORSEC. So the general structure of encryption, principle of encryption synthesis is the following. I have a different pseudo-random sequences, generally because we're working on stream ciphers. So sigma 1, sigma m. I will make the demo with m equal 2. And the encryption synthesis will build an encryption algorithm, and depending on the key, it will produce one sequence or another. And the general structure, so you have here the key. We have nonlinear feedback shift registers, and the initial state is a key. And they are combined on an 8-bit combining function. Then we increase the nonlinearity to increase cryptographic strength with substitution on 8-bit, and we produce a random sequence, which will be combined to the ciphertext. And depending on the key, you will produce different ciphertext. So it is a very classical scheme based stream ciphers, but not based on linear feedback register, because they are rather poor from a combinatorial point of view, but non-linear feedback register, and you have a huge amount of possibility from a mathematical point of view for the different feedback functions of the registers. So you have here the general structure. This is the most simple one. We have designed more complex one, but it is the general principle. So now it's time for demos. So I have registered the demo just to avoid the demo effect and the different difficulties, but I'm not allowed to travel with the code. So first, you have to really to twist your mind. You have put all the bricks, may them be legal or technical. And in fact, you can build a lot of scenarios. You can interchange the different roles between prosecutor, expert, defendant, attackers. So I will show only 3 cases, but of course we can do many things. It's just up to your creativity and imagination. Some of the demo could be made with a malware, but in fact, remind that we have to convince a judge, an expert, with a real algorithm, because we are in a forensic setting. And I have observed during many years that cryptographic proof are considered at the same level as religion. Once again, I have a cryptographic proof, okay. I have the proof. And aside this, most of the forensic experts have no sufficient knowledge in cryptanalysis and in cryptology. Of course, if you want to perform, you want to forge wrong digital evidences, it is very useful to perform an initial step of open source intelligence. There is a very interesting approach If you want, for example, to convince that someone is guilty, you will produce an encryption algorithm and using a secret passphrase, for example, which is a surname of his secret mistress. Only the defender knows that he has a mistress, and the open source intelligence will help you to find her first name and so on. You can use also passwords that have leaked in databases. So it will strengthen the power of the proof. So intelligence and secret knowledge or not very public knowledge may help and optimize your scenario. So first scenario, in green, what could be done in a democratic country, and on the right side, what could be done, or what is probably done, in dictatorship. So I think that the demo will be better than any words. So we have here one ciphertext and the encryption system under a compiled form. Just to convince you that it is a real ciphertext, we are going to explore the ciphertext. So you see it is random data. So we are going first to try a first password. So the most secret. It is slightly more than 128 bits. And we produce a French plain text which is in French. Okay? Now we use, with the same ciphertext, with the same program, we use another password which is the less secret. And we produce a plain text in English. We have done this up to 4 different ciphertexts. So we can play a big game. And of course, we can do many other things, and it is the purpose of the forthcoming demos. Okay. The next one, the aim is the same. The two sides aspects are the same. But here, we are going to transform one file in another one. And we are considering VeraCrypt containers. So I store my information in a VeraCrypt, but in fact, the actual VeraCrypt container, the secret one, is generated whenever I need it. But in a rogue country, it could prove that, for example, this container may be transformed in another one with a secret key that is likely to be known only by the defender. So, okay. We have here one VeraCrypt container and the other algorithm. And I use a key, which is another secret. Once again, 128 bits, slightly more, but no matter, it is a short key. Of course, if I would use any other key, I would produce something that is cryptographically strong. It is very important in the algorithm analysis. And here, I have just displayed the initial content of the 4 or the 5 registers. So it is a nonlinear feedback shift registers. And we see that we have now, from container 0, which is official, we have produced a target file container, VC extension for VeraCrypt. Now, let us explore the 2 containers. So, in my computer for the demo, the hierarchy was not very well implemented, but no matter. So I open the first one, the official one. Just for you, I am going to show the password, which is, let us take the time, okay, which is password container 0, just for the demo, but maybe whatever you want. And what is important, you see that here it is a container using Serpent to fish AES and the hashmark SHA 512. It is a property of the official hierarchy container, the expert, or which is considered for the first analysis. Okay. We open it, and there is a file. We open this file, and we see that is a Excel file, and we see the two authors, Joseph Jacob Calacal and Scott, I don't manage to read. But there are the metadata. Okay, now let us have a look on the other container. So we open the other container, so target file.vc. We are going to do the same. So we dismount the first one, and we select the file. So you see here target file.vc. I put a different password. So you see it's a password container 1. Once again, it can be a totally different password, no matter, just for the demo. So the hierarchy is rather slow compared to crypt, but okay. We open it. Alors, first the properties, and you see here that it is no longer Serpent to fish AES, but it is Kuznetchik to Schiff, and the hash function is Tribog, just to show that we have indeed a really different container with different cryptographic algorithm and parameters. And of course, the different password you have seen. Now let us have a look what is inside this container. Two different, one file seems to be secret. We will see in the last demo what it actually is. But let us open this file, the Excel file. Remember the metadata about the author, but now we have first author Xi Jinping and Donald Trump for the second author. Of course, I've crafted wrong metadata. It's very easily. Once again, use the tools and techniques I've described. So, apparently I have a container, but I produce with a short key another container. And I can do a lot of things in the same way. Okay. So I think you have perfectly understood the principle. Now, to finish, third demo, probably the most perverse one, how to, from an innocent-looking file, to produce a hierarchical container. The principle is the same. When you understand perfectly what encryption synthesis is, it's very easy. What I am going to show, it is a reverse of what we have developed for observe what we call low entropy cryptography, which from a ciphertext we generate with a highly secure level an innocent-looking file. So let us have a look on this third demo. So just to list the content, so we have a PDF file and the program. Let us show that it is a real PDF file. So it is a scientific paper, no matter, it was just for the purpose of the demo. Okay. Now we use the program. Sorry. With one more secret, and once again, I just produce the content of the registers, and you see that there is one target file.vc which has been produced from the PDF file with the same way. Okay, we are going to explore the. So I took the same password. So we are open the VeraCrypt container. I just accelerate the process. Okay. VeraCrypt is indeed very slow. Okay, we are here. Now I'm going into the archive I've mounted. So, and we have the two files, and I am going to show you that indeed it is a real PDF. It is supposed to be secret, and so on. So it is a document that proves that the US attacked the French presidency computers, just for fun. Okay. Now let us conclude. Of course, we can do many more things. I wanted to show 3 very illustrative cases, but we are working on different other possibilities. So it's very difficult. I am a strong defender of free crypto, but it's not so simple. We must not have a rather Manichaean view of crypto. It's very difficult. The aim of this talk was to show that it is possible to do from a technical point of view. And to prove that finally we must be very careful about the concept of digital evidence. It's not so simple. Quite everything in the digital world, even for crypto, can be crafted, forged, and the trust may be different from what it appears to be. I think that if we want to manage crypto, to speak about crypto, I don't think that the solution is at the politician level or at the technical level. It is at the citizens level. We must ask to have, it is mandatory for companies, for individuals to protect human rights, to have access to the strongest crypto. But we must be aware of the fact that we have to find some trade-off between protecting the citizens and their freedom, but also protecting them against organized crime. Because organized crime, terrorism, it is a world everlasting dictatorship. So cryptography is very important, once again, but do not consider it except as a tool. The real goal is freedom and democracy. And I think that with terrorism and with organized crime, I'm not totally free. It's a very strong debate. I don't pretend to have any solution. I think that I'm convinced for many years that the hacking movement is probably the best watchman a democracy can have. And that's why I'm very concerned about the UN Cybercrime Convention, but because they try to restrict this ability and capability. Once again, read this text is very important. We need, once again, free, strong crypto for any citizens, but at the same time, and we have seen different approaches, the ability, the capabilities of counter the criminal use of crypto. So, before ending, I'm currently working to extend this work on biometry and block cipher-based encryption synthesis. One of my main research area is to study mathematical backdoor in encryption. We have published an AES-like algorithm at Black Hat 2017 with a backdoor, a wonderful backdoor. Do not use this algorithm. But I think there are a lot of research aspects we must work on. Because I think that the research on backdoor, the possibility, is not explored as it should be. I have finished. Just for you, there is, on the slide, there are a lot of references that support my talk. And thank you for your attention.
Mind if I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, my name is G. Mark, and I was an earlier presenter. As you look at a ciphertext that could decrypt into multiple values, it would seem to me from information theory that the ciphertext would have to have a length greater than the outputs. That is to say, if I am producing 1,000 character outputs that say, he's a thief, he's a saint, I would probably have, not necessarily 2,000, there's going to be some efficiencies, but I would go ahead if I had to take a look at an encryption algorithm and try to disprove that one versus the other, I would point out that the ciphertext is too big to be a common algorithm for a single message.
You're right. In fact, it is, apparently, it could be non-compliant with Shannon theory. Apparently, but you have probably noticed that the plain text produced have the same length as a ciphertext.
Both plain texts.
Both plain text. Otherwise, I could say, okay, you just decrypt the first half and the second half. I did the same with a very quick container, but I will make public the demo. And you will see that, in fact, the size are exactly the same. Otherwise, you could say, oh, there is a trick, there is some sort of magic. No, they are the same. But in fact, the Shannon theory has been partially misinterpreted because it describes a general theory. But between general theory and some particular instances, you find a way. It is precisely the case. But you're right, regarding forensic expert, if you would have a forensic expert who would be a cryptanalyst, you must be sure that analyzing the algorithm, he cannot prove that there is deniable cryptography. But we are, in fact, in most of the case, the forensic experts have not the cryptanalysis knowledge. But once again, you will see the demo, they have the exact same length.
And I love your work, thank you.
It is very important, but you're right, it is a point that would be deserve to be stressed on.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the final conclusion, do mathematics, and doing mathematics with hacking and hacking with mathematics, so it's very fun, honestly. Don't fear mathematics. So, thank you.